Okay, guys, welcome. I thought I'd do a Q&A about the Toyota 3.0, the 3VZE engine that we find in our second gen 4Runners, early pickups. And yeah, because a little while ago I did a video on how to make that engine run forever and is it any good? And because that motor gets a ton of hate on the forums and internet, and it's just a lot of it's so unjustified. And boy, I put out this video and now it's got over 20,000 views and the response has been fantastic. It's just been, I'm blown away because I thought this video would get a ton of hate because this engine gets a ton of hate on the internet, and the feedback has been fantastic. There's a ton of questions, so I thought the best thing to do would be, I've gotten some emails, it's the best thing to do would just be do a Q&A on it. And yeah, I'm so thank you all for the feedback and support and everything. It's been great. And, in these early Toyotas, the 3.0 gets a lot of criticism for reliability. And when really there's only one potential issue, and that's head gaskets. And other than that, it's like so bulletproof. And the head gaskets is somewhat justified, but there's, as I pointed out in my other video, there's ways around that, or ways to, really reduce that being a problem. And the other complaints are being slow and that kind of thing. Well, if that's your complaint, you bought the wrong car. And it's just simply that. These, even modern 4Runners, they're not meant for race cars. They're not fast. They're not big, powerful V8 mud boggers, It's not like a full-size Ford pickup truck. You can put 40-inch monster motors on it and go mud bogging. That's not what I would use it for. They're great, reliable adventure vehicles. The tortoise and the hare, the tortoise wins the race. And they have really good low-range torque. Good for just going down trails, crawling over some rocks. Really reliable. And, if you're in the market for an early Toyota with a 3.0, buy the manual transmission. It's just way better. The automatic, it just eats up power. The transmission gives you really good control. The gear ratios, keeping it in the power band where you want it to be, that kind of thing. That combined with the low range on the transfer case and on the trails, it's great. It's fine. So yeah, I think we'll just get right into it. This is going to be like a one and done thing. This video is just going to be shot and uploaded on the phone here. We're not doing any fancy editing or anything like that. We're just going to make this, I want to get this done and up because it's been a while. I had an abscess in my jaw, and my jaw was all swollen. So for like 2-3 weeks, I didn't feel good. I didn't want to talk. It hurt to eat. It hurt to talk. So it got me behind on everything, and antibiotics, they just mess with my mood. They just make me kind of unenthusiastic for things. But I want to get this up here because it's the day before Thanksgiving. Give you all something to watch when you're maybe in a long car ride or sitting around with family and zoning out. And but give family your attention, because the biggest gift we can give anybody is our full presence and our full attention. And it's not that hard to do, and it's just a miraculous gift. So yeah, be present with your family. But after you're chilling out, winding down from the turkey, can get your questions answered here. So these are a combination of emails. Most of this is just going to be stuff that was left in comment section. I left replies on most of it. There's so much there that it's really hard for me to, there's 235 comments. I don't even think we're gonna have time to go through it all. We're just gonna skip through this as fast as I can. I don't have it planned out or anything. We'll just see what we can get through today. If we need to do a part 2, we'll do a part 2 later, but get this out for the holidays. So a great comment here by Nick, though, that what a fantastic video. I was a dealership mechanic and now a service advisor for over 20 years. And if everyone had the mindset that you do, I would have a lot less traffic coming through my doors. Perfect advice from experienced, old school, and very practical person. Cheers. So cheers to you, Nick. Thank you. Appreciate that. It just validates what I've been saying. Zach, straight to the point. Use OEM parts. Don't be cheap. Good video and advice. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, OEM parts especially on those crucial areas. You can use AutoZone and stuff. I do. on a lot of things. But ignition systems, Toyotas love OEM on ignition systems, NGK, Denso, that kind of stuff. Use OEM on that stuff because they don't run right and without it. So if you're having trouble with your car running right, do a tune-up with OEM stuff, wires and plugs especially. You can get away with the distributor cap and rotor, wires and plugs though for sure. I look like a younger version of Doc from Back to the Future movie. Okay. I run the red Toyota coolant to keep the cooling system in excellent shape. Fair enough, Dougie, but you know, stick with OEM. What's in your manual on any car you have is really the best advice I could give. Metallurgy and all that kind of stuff comes into play about what kind of coolant they use, especially these days. In modern cars, there's so many kinds of coolants. But in the old days, we had the green, and then the red started coming out, and if you do change, stick with what you got. Or if it was changed, stick with what you got. But if you do change it, flush the system with water, like flush, because if you get it mixed at all, it's just going to gum up your system so bad you're going to have real problems. So, yeah, stick with what you got and change it frequently, probably every 2 years, depending on your usage, changing coolant. Yes, in maintenance, right? So a lot of guys asking about doing a maintenance video because I mentioned I would do that. I haven't got to it yet. I'm planning to do one on maintenance. We'll go through, the usual maintenance stuff. Then we'll do kind of the, making sure we cover like all the drive line. There's tons of Zerk fittings, grease fittings on these things. I also want to do upgrades I changed out to manual hubs on mine. So what's the benefit there? Is there a benefit there? Is it what everybody thinks it is? So why change to manual hubs from the factory splines on there? That makes it full-time or like more like the driveline's always engaged. So I want to do that. There's a couple other ideas I have too. So good modifications, addressing some of the weak points on these cars. Every car has a weak point. The old Toyotas have a lot fewer of them. They're built like brick shit houses, whether it's the 4Runners pickups, Land Cruisers. They all have the solid full box frames, all that stuff. But there are a couple weak points on all these. So yeah, more coming for sure. Do they have a separate oil cooler, and would that mod make sense? Yes, some of them do have a separate oil cooler. I'm not sure which models have that, to be frank. I need to look that up because some of them do, and it might be the Autotrans ones do. But you really can't have too much cooling. So if yours doesn't have it, you might want to put that factory system on there. It'll generally be some lines running to, typically on most cars, it'll be some lines running to the radiator. Mine doesn't have that, but I know some of them do. But yes, cooling is good on these because of that hot head gasket area. So keeping your antifreeze cool and your oil cool. Both really help. What fluids do you use for the 4x4 service? Yeah, I'll go over that in a video. It will matter if you have an automatic or manual transmission, but I will go over that because the differentials, the transfer case, the transmission require specific fluids for sure. So we'll do that in the maintenance video. Lots of great comments here. Such positive feedback. You guys are amazing. What radiator did I put in it? Yeah, so I mentioned I changed out my radiator. I went and got a 3-core copper radiator like the OEM, like original equipment. I think copper transfers the heat the best. A lot of the newer ones that you get, replacement ones, are not 3-core. They're also aluminum and plastic. And I just didn't want plastic in there. And also, I like the 3-core concept, so I'm sticking with 3-core for sure because cooling is really important. And copper is a great conductor of heat. So the more cores, the better. I think copper conducts heat better than aluminum also. More information, please. What about injectors? What about injectors? So, and I left you a question about like what do you want to know? So OEM is number one. I also heard good results on some of the eBay 4-hole injectors too, which is I'm curious about. Like I might want to try that at some point when I need it. I haven't needed to change my injectors though. I have 320,000 miles. Haven't had a problem. Can you talk about the NOx sensor, TPS sensor, and timing? So again, more information would be good. Like what troubles are you running into? NOx sensors can fail, which will mess with the timing, and you'll get pinging and stuff like that. So that's just diagnosing, is it the sensor itself or is it, bad connection to the sensors? Typically it's a sensor though, right? But these old sensors seem to, I rarely have problems. Throttle position sensor, never had a problem. I think you're talking about getting the throttle position sensor mounted on there in the right alignment, which can be tricky, and then timing the vehicle. So great resource is yotatech.com, YOTA tech.com. They have a lot of how-to articles on this stuff rather than me explaining it all, because you really kind of need that in front of you to go through the process. So getting that sensor on there properly though I think that's what you're getting at, because that does matter. And then that does affect the timing, and timing at factory specs is what you want to do for emissions and fuel economy and temperature. Keeping that engine cool when we retard advanced timing can affect the temperature of the engine. So where can I find a complete diagram of all heater hose locations? That's a service manual. So get a Hayes manual or a factory service manual. There again, go to yotatech.com. There's usually links there for factory service manuals there. And also, Google, right? They will have pictures of engine bays, and you can figure it out pretty good. The heater hoses on these are not as complicated as those ones on the Land Cruisers. So we don't have that problem on the 4Runners that the Land Cruisers do. What do you think about putting Doug Thorley headers on to keep the heat away from the back of the heads? And please, more videos on maintenance. Yes. Yeah, I think if you're in there already and like you're doing work already, or you feel that inspired that you want to do that and get that heat away, or you want to put header wrap on the crossover that goes behind the head there, that is where the heat comes from and can cause like probably the biggest cause of the head gasket problem. Aside from the early ones, 92 and earlier have bad designs, that heat I think is probably a big contributing factor. So yeah, it's worth thinking about, right? So headers, if your state allows it, emissions laws and all that stuff, check, right? So you don't kind of shaft yourself. Because I know like in California we have issues with that kind of stuff for sure. One of the reasons I don't want to be here. And keeping the heat away from the heads, I can't argue with that. I'd be on board with that. I don't see anything wrong with that idea. And yeah, because that crossover can be an issue. But it's kind of a pain to get in there. So that's like, is that a project you want to take on, or if you're already in there, Abe has over 500,000 miles on his Mrs. 4Runner. The check engine light is always on, has a bunch of codes, and overheats when you drive up a range, but it just won't die. Yeah, so I mean, you're running it with the 500,000 miles, a bunch of codes, and it's overheating. So there's maintenance and work that needs to be done there to keep it going for longer, right? And it just won't die. But if it's overheating, you're like on borrowed time. And so you need to solve what's causing the overheating. So you have to look up those codes and see what the problem is. As soon as you identify what those codes are, you can start doing the diagnosis around that and solve whatever. Because, if those things are like causing the engine to not run with the proper fuel air ratio, if it's on like an early version of like limp mode, that kind of stuff, where they don't really have that, but the engine will make adjustments to compensate for whatever's wrong. And you could be running into those issues of it not adjusting to temperatures right and that kind of stuff. So yeah, and that's OBD1. Assuming you have an early 4Runner, you didn't say the year either. And but I'm assuming it's a 3.0 since you're commenting on my videos. So Yeah, you need to solve those things and keep that thing on the road because they're worth keeping on the road. You just can't buy these things anymore. You can't buy SUVs like this anymore. But they're worth preserving. They're no longer are these like buy them and just drive them and throw them away cars. Like they're getting to be classics. Like mine's going to be 29 years old next year. You just can't get them anymore. They're getting harder to find too, and they're starting to get more expensive. So take good care of it. What coolant do I use? I use the green. The new pink Toyota coolant is not around yet. Yeah, right. So there's the green. So yeah, that's fine. Just keep using what you're doing, like I said before. Just be consistent with it. I've been purchasing parts from RockAuto and getting parts that are about mid-priced and good reviews. After hearing you talk about the importance of quality parts, is there anything you recommend? I know RockAuto has a lot of brands. Any that you recommend? We're replacing the timing belt and water pump in the next few weeks. Yeah, so timing belt and water pump. That I would do OEM. That's what I did. So it is more expensive, but if you do the work yourself, you're saving a ton of money. So not the most fun job, but it is doable in the driveway. But plan a day for it and take it slow. But yeah, OEM with that, because it's this kind of thing. Why OEM with that is simply because you don't want to have to go back in there and do it again before the service is due. You don't want it breaking. These are non-interference motors, but it's such a big job, and even just the water pump to get to that is not fun. So because it's all driven off the timing belt, so you got to take all that off again. So OEM in that case is just because you don't want to have to do it again. So it's worth the extra $50 or whatever to get the good parts. RockAuto does have good parts. I get stuff from there too. Again, I'll do more in the maintenance video, but the OEM for ignition and stuff like that is a good thing to do. Other stuff, like I said, can be whatever. Sometimes it's whatever you can find, because some of these parts are hard to find now because these cars are so old. So RockAuto has a lot of that hard to find stuff too that the dealer no longer stocks or charges a lot of money for. So if you need hoses and air hoses, vacuum hoses, that kind of stuff, RockAuto works. And then they do have some OEM stuff. They have Denso, and I think you can get NGK plugs there and stuff. So yeah, it doesn't really matter where you get it. RockAuto has great prices though. I shop there a lot. What would you recommend for one that already has a blown motor? Should I rebuild it or just go ahead and do the 5VZE swap? Mine is a 94 four-wheel drive with 230,000 miles. That's really up to you. So again, smog laws, first of all, right? And then if you do the swap yourself, because when you swap in stuff, now you have to do the maintenance and work yourself. A mechanic's gonna really not want to touch your swap because they don't know what parts are in there. They don't know what you did. So you're kind of on your own after you do that. If you blow a rear end, it's one thing, but on motor stuff, mechanics are going to be hesitant to touch that, right? So that's something to consider. An upgrade on the engine, like I would definitely consider that on mine too, if and when the time comes. The 3.0 is fine, it's good, but are there better options? Of course. Like more power is not a bad thing, right? Sometimes there's easier maintenance, that kind of stuff. It's just, these are all pretty easy though, except for the timing belt thing, like why they went to belts instead of chains. I know it's a cost-cutting thing, but come on, guys. Even Toyota, come on. But yeah, what I like about your comment though, or your question, is that you're keeping the truck, right? You're not giving it to the junkyard. So good on you for preserving it and do whatever you can do and afford to keep it on the road and keep enjoying it. And if not, give it to somebody that'll do that. Don't scrap these things anymore, guys, because that cash for clunkers took a lot of them off the road. These are getting harder to find. We gotta keep them going, or give them to somebody that will sell it to somebody cheap. I got a brake booster on the way out. A video would be awesome. Yeah, that might be a little bit beyond the scope, because unless I'm doing the job, like have a need to do the job, it would be hard to really show that, right? But the hydraulic booster is not hard. It just bolts to the firewall. You disconnect the lines, disconnect the linkages. We don't have a whole lot of ABS stuff and sensors to worry about on these older cars, so it's pretty easy. So just disconnect everything, put it in there, and then do a good brake flush with clean fluid. Flush everything out really well after you open up that system. But otherwise, the linkages are not that bad. You might have to get under the dash to disconnect the... I don't remember on this one if you have to get under the dash and disconnect the brake pedal or not. But it's just basically a rod that goes through the firewall. So you probably can just undo it in the engine compartment. Not 100% sure though. I haven't had to do that on this car at all. So the only time I disconnected the brake was when my clutch and brake pedal bracket broke, which is a common thing on these. A lot of guys commenting on theirs, how reliable it is. Great video. Are you burning oil? If so, how much? No, I'm not. Usually between oil changes, sometimes I can lose maybe a half a quart. You know, but I have a lot of miles, and but it's not anything I even worry about. Sometimes I have to add a little bit between oil changes, but and I do mine every 3,000 miles. But no, there's no smoke coming out the tailpipe, anything like that. I think it's just like, you know, typical consumption. I know a lot of newer cars burn a lot more oil than mine and use up oil a lot faster. So what are my thoughts on the automatic? So yeah, I definitely on these would prefer, on any of the old Toyotas, would prefer a manual transmission. That's one thing I don't like about the Land Cruisers too, is you can't get a manual. So, and even the third gen 4Runners are hard to find in manuals. So the second gens are a lot more common in manual transmission. And I just prefer that because I can keep that thing, because it's not the most powerful thing, I can keep it in the power band, power range where I want it for my, you know, mountain passes, on the trail, that kind of stuff. I've always preferred manual anyway for off-roading, but that's personal preference. I just feel more a direct connection, you know. Modern automatics are really good. The older ones, they call them slush boxes for a reason. There just isn't that connection. They're like really sloppy, you know. But so the automatic is not unreliable. It just takes away extra power. I think they're not as fast as the manual. They're not as powerful. You don't have that direct engine connection just going through a couple gears to the rear, right, to drive you. That all that fluid and stuff takes up horsepower and torque out of the equation, so it's reducing the horsepower getting to the tires. So I would buy a manual. I would prefer a manual. I would not buy one in the automatic just because it's my preference. But it's not to say that it's not going to serve you well. Like, it's not a bad car. There's nothing wrong with it, but I would definitely, my preference is manual, without a doubt. 91 4Runner, third owner. I've had to replace bearings, front diff, timing belt, and radiator so far. Doing it all myself and saved me a lot of money, and I learned a lot about vehicles. Yes. So it's a big thing with older vehicles is if you're going to own one and drive it like I do, especially, you know, you're going to be out in the backcountry, you're going to be doing long trips with it like I do. Learning how to work on it yourself will save you a lot of headaches. You can do trail repairs or side of the road repairs and stuff like that. I don't feel like I haven't had to do that at all. Mine's super reliable, and so is yours. You know, I take good care of it. It's the beauty of Toyotas. But if something does happen, you have a little tool roll with you, and you can, you know, at least you know about your car, and you can get it limped home, right? And the older cars are easier to do that. Modern cars, it's just, there's so many computers and sensors to limp home is really hard to do. So that's the beauty of owning an old truck, right? Is that it's the simplicity of it, is that you can make field repairs and stuff like that. To get back to your question, replace bearings, you didn't say which bearings. There's a lot of bearings in a car. So since you said front diff, I'm going to say it's like bearings in the diff or wheel bearings, right? Either one of those can happen. Front diff, having to replace that. Now, see, that's interesting. And that's one of the reasons I'm an advocate of a manual hub swap. So, because when the Toyotas, the second gens as they come, and some of the pickups too, as they come with that flange on there. So even when you're in two-wheel drive and doing highway miles, you do a 500-mile drive to go visit grandma or your friend, the front diff and all those components are still spinning if you, even with it in two-wheel drive on the transfer case. So if you can unlock those hubs, now all that stuff is just along for the ride, so you're not getting the wear and tear. So that's one of the reasons, and I'll do a more in-depth video about that too. But timing belt, that's maintenance. Radiator, yeah, these are old, so the radiators, a radiator that's 20 years or more old, it should be replaced. Just do it. Don't even wait for it to show you signs. It like needs it. So all of you with anything older than 20 years, just replace your radiator. It'll just save you a headache. And you've Land Cruiser guys too. Those things like the 80 series, those radiators on there, the tank across the top are just known for like not showing signs, but then just blowing up. It happens to a lot of people. Yeah, a guy here did the head gasket on his 90 pickup, which was one of the years the recall was on, back in 1999. So Toyota did it. So yeah, I think those recalls are still in effect. A few years ago, I had a service bulletin that was put out on mine for replacing some of the steering linkage, and Toyota did it for free. So, and that was like 8 years ago. So if you have an early one, go on their website, put in your VIN, see if there's any recalls or service bulletins on your Toyota. Always worth doing, because there's a bunch of stuff in there. They'll do it for free. That's what I did. What else? I want to see more maintenance videos. Yes, that's coming. Somebody from New Zealand with a 98 Hilux Surf and a 97 Surf. Knock sensor is another issue with the 3.0. Yeah, I haven't run into that. I've heard that though. But I think I can't say that it's any more common than any other car. That's just one of those things that other cars I've had that fail. Chryslers especially. Holy cow, those things like seem to go out once a year like clockwork. 90s and early 2000s Chryslers. Ugh. Never again. Never again. Lots of comments here. Go back to this video, guys, and like if you're doubting buying a 3.0, look at the comments on my other video. So many guys saying how reliable that theirs is. And there's a lot of these things out here. If you're not in the Rust Belt, there's first and second gens all over the place. Maybe not first gens anymore, but old pickups and old 4Runners. Tons of them. And if they suck, they wouldn't be on the road. Like all the other cars from the early 90s, late 80s that are not on the road, those were not good, right? I mean, they were, but now they're 25 plus years old. I bought a 68 Firebird when it was 19 years old, and it was not nearly in the shape of this Toyota. Like this Toyota, aside from some wear and tear, like you drive it around, you wouldn't know it's not a new car. What size tires do I run? 31s. Yeah, I run Mickey Thompson ATZ P3s. I like them very much. I've run a lot of different tires over the years. But honestly, most manufacturers now with modern tire technology, like I could tell you, even back in the day, BF Goodrich, if you got 20,000 miles out of a set of BF Goodriches, you were lucky. It was terrible. Like for wear. They were fine off-road. I didn't like the mud terrains, though, compared to some other ones. They were just, especially when I lived in Chicago, they were horrible on the snow. Absolutely. And they would hydroplane in water. You hit a puddle and just fly all over the road. It was bad stuff. But I think modern tire technology, like Mickey Thompson, Cooper, BF Goodrich, you're not going to go wrong. Just stay away from the mall crawler tires. Like get a tread that's going to suit you. The real thing is about the durability of the tire and the tread that's going to serve your purpose. Guys saying the 3.4 is good too. Yes, and it is. It's fantastic. In the third gens and Tacomas, I believe. I have a 93, but my four-wheel drive does not work. I think it's something with the vacuum, but not sure, honestly. Is there any way you can show me how does the vacuum for the four-wheel drive works? Yeah, that's the ADD system, so that's the four-wheel drive does work partly on vacuum. And so because they didn't have the manual unlocking hubs anymore, they came up with this other systems for like, it started to get more normie status, you know, like soccer mom type status. They got rid of so you didn't have to get out and lock your hubs anymore. They came up with this other system that's a sleeve that basically the one of the shafts is split and it's got splines on the sleeve, fits over when you put it in four-wheel drive, and that's vacuum operated. So all you have to do is crawl into the car and you can see where on the rear differential there's vacuum lines and stuff. Just check those things, make sure they're not split, broken, or pulled it off. just check them, replace them as needed. They go up into the engine bay to get engine vacuum, so it's not that complicated, and you can do the elimination steps too. But the vacuum diagram, again, go to Yoda Tech and get the service manual and see how that's all for the vacuum diagram. And I think that there's some tech articles on there too. But yeah, it's not that hard. Just inspect. You'll see underneath the car by the front differential there where all those vacuum lines are and where it all connects. So just make sure everything's connected. Make sure none of those vacuum lines you're looking at are broken, split, or have any kind of leak or holes in them. And if it's not working entirely, then that's probably the most likely reason it's not working. I have a 93 T100 with the 3.0. The T100s were fantastic. Cool trucks. I wish I had one of those. Like, that was such a great size. That and the early Tundras before they got all huge. It has a misfire since I've had it. I've changed the plugs, wires, distributor. What do you think? So yeah, you want to make sure your timing is good. Common thing with these is vacuum leaks, though. So you want to go and inspect everything, inspect all your vacuum lines, even inspecting the big air hoses that go from the air cleaner box to the plenum and stuff. All that plastic, anywhere air goes through, there's plastic. Like, inspect all of it, because I found like a little crack on the underneath side of one of those big air hoses on mine. Just a little split, and it made mine run pretty bad. So yeah, vacuum leaks are a thing. There's, in the 90s, vacuum lines were like, there was a vacuum line fetish by automotive designers, and they're just everywhere. So check for vacuum leaks. And you can just take some starting fluid while the car's running and just spray around, and if the idle goes up anywhere, then you know there's a vacuum leak in that spot, and that's an easy way to find it. Can I make a video on the correct manufacturer diagram of the vacuum hoses on this engine, because there isn't one video out there that really shows step by step where each hose goes to, and the diagram printout does not really pin down where each hose goes to. Well, it does if you got the right diagram, right? So again, get the factory service manual over at yodatech.com and try that first. For me to make a video would be like I said, there's tons of vacuum lines in these things. It would be like a major undertaking. So yeah, find the factory service manual. Go to Yoda Tech, see if there's either a how-to article or a factory service manual there, and look at that first, and then write me a message and see what I can do to help you out. So some of these questions are starting getting repeating, like about radiators and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys got your... We have a retired chiropractor who finally has time to restore my old 1990 4x4 SR5 3VZE with 157,000 miles. You're restoring it. That's so cool. Hats off to you, sir. First of all, for being a chiropractor, because I recently discovered chiropractic and have gone, and it's like taken 10 years off me. And it's like flexibility, mobility. I can like turn my head to the side now. It's amazing. I feel like life has been restored. So yeah, appreciate you for being that. But restoring an old 4Runner, a second-gen 4Runner, awesome. I'm going to restore her. I'd like to see her hit 300K. You're going to hit 300K. Easy enough. I have over 300K. My goal is 600,000 and beyond. So stay tuned. Hit subscribe. We'll see where that goes. This guy agrees with me on not doing the EGR delete because he just pulled his off, cleaned it up, and put it back on, and it worked with carb cleaner. Question, is it possible to change the PCV valve without pulling the intake plenum? Yes. Now that, yeah. So that PCV valve is way up under there, right? So you can get it out, and I need to do mine too. It's not bad yet, but I want to do it, and I don't want to pull the intake plenum either. But you can get some long pliers and get under there and like wiggle that thing out. and maneuver it out and put, attach a new one onto that vacuum hose and maneuver it back on and stick it in there. Guys have told me they've done that, so I know it's doable. But yeah, a hassle either way, right? But give that a shot if you can. Go to Harbor Freight or something, get a long needle nose or something. I'm gonna try it. If I pull that off, I'll let you guys know. But I'm not gonna do it right away or anytime soon. But yeah, what oil do I like to recommend for manual, transfer case, differentials, etc.? We'll get to that with maintenance video. So stick around. Getting back on track here, guys, after being down. So appreciate all your patience and all that stuff. What year was the head gasket issue fixed? So that was the early ones. I'm not sure exactly when that cutoff was, but I know 90. The early 3.0s up until around 92 was the recall. I have a 95 doing necessary maintenance on and doing first big modules, which is adding a third gen 4Runner E-locker into the rear axle of my truck. If you pull that off, let me know, because everything I know about it is that's not really doable. You basically have to swap the whole axle. I think the axle width is different too, and then you run into like braking system stuff and all that stuff. It's like kind of a job. So somebody tell me if third gens had. No, they can't, because I think Toyota has this rear drum brake thing. I think a lot of them still have rear drum brakes, so I imagine third gens still have drum brakes too. But now I have hiccups from drinking water. Yeah, let me know if you pull that off, adding that 4Run third gen E-locker into a second gen, because everything I've checked about said that would be a real pain, like basically not doable. I don't know. I got mine for $1,400. Just needs some new suspension, but she's running good. Yeah, on an older car, I consider that maintenance. You're going to have to do ball joints and bushings and stuff like that. That's normal. Steering stuff, suspension stuff, shocks. But further into the suspension, eventually you're going to have to do all the bushings, all that kind of stuff. And sway bars and everything. It's old. That's old rubber, And the rear end sag on the rear springs, which is a whole other thing because you can't get the factory springs anymore. This guy is awesome. Thank you. Here, ticking noise in my 95. I'm a little worried I haven't found a solution. You might have an idea of a potential solution or something to look out for. So ticking noises on these, provided, depending what the ticking noise is. If it sounds kind of like a typewriter, that's pretty normal. These have what's called solid lifters in them, so they're not hydraulic lifters for the valve train. So they do make noise. They do make a ticking noise when the car's running. It just kind of sounds like a typewriter. If you have other like pinging or knocking noises and that stuff, that's what I would worry about. If the ticking's really bad, you might want to have a mechanic check and see if you need a valve adjustment. Because with solid lifters, they do need adjustment sometimes. It's kind of a headache. Not the funnest thing to do in the world, and you have to get it right. So it's not something you want to mess up on. But I haven't done one in 15 years, so that ticking noise is just, it's part of the thing of owning an early Toyota. They had solid lifters. So let's see, I bought a 92 4Runner. Good for you. Awesome. And my main worry is the crossover pipe for the exhaust. I'm hoping it won't cause head gasket failure anytime soon. It has 186,000 miles on it. Right, so I appreciate your concern. Obviously, you've been doing a lot of reading before you bought this car. So good. That's awesome. You might not have watched the whole video, though. It's just doing that maintenance, right? So go back, watch the video that you attach this comment to. Do the maintenance. If you're really worried about it and you want to put header wrap on it or do the headers or something like that, then go for it. But yeah, it could be an issue. But just make sure your cooling system, oiling system, and all that stuff is in really good shape. And yeah, keep everything just do maintenance sooner than later. Pop in new radiator if it's still the original, that kind of stuff. Make sure the fan shroud is on there and all that kind of stuff. So keep the cooling happening and you should be fine. I live in California in the very north end of the valley, and in the summertime it's 95 to 110 degrees all summer long, and I haven't overheated yet or blown a head gasket. So Okinawa picked up a 95 Hilux Surf, which is our, at least back in the day, it was equivalent to our 4Runners. 100K miles. I have no clue if the recall was done. I'm brand new to working on vehicles, but I'm looking forward to learning. Definitely. I'm bringing my Surf back to California when my tour is up, so I'll drive it on the ground. Oh, military, okay. That's why you're in Okinawa. Gotcha. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so you're coming back from duty and you're going to bring it back to California with you. So military, you can do that and maybe get exemptions from the import. Oh, no, it's old enough. You can import it. Yeah, right? 25 years, I think. So cool. Yeah, find me one. It's got the 3.0, cool. And so, yeah, bring it back here. This is MJL. I need to message you because when you get back to California, let's get together and do a video on it and put it up on the channel. Let's do a rig walk around on your rig. So reach out to me, MJL, from 6 months ago. Is this video that old? Holy cow. It doesn't seem that long. This year has gone by so fast. Yeah, I'll message you, but hit me up. Let's do a rig walk around video on your Hilux Surf. That's going to be coming to the United States. That's really cool. So we're at 40 minutes. I'm going to do a few more, and then we'll call it good. All right, guys? A whole bunch of questions about problems with an automatic transmission. When I started it and started to drive, it felt sluggish. I have to shift it on load mode and then shift it into second gear and then drive. It struggles to take off. Engine is good. Someone had mentioned to me that it could be the solenoid, so I bought an ATP RE5 auto trans control solenoid. Hopefully it's that. If not, then maybe I have to get the transmission rebuilt. Yeah, so automatic transmissions are really complicated, right? They're a complex thing. I don't know specifically. I haven't owned an automatic transmission, old Toyota with an auto trans. I like the manuals. And another reason why is just it's simpler. But go to yodatech.com and do a search there in the second gen section and or early 4Runner section. And see other guys that, usually with old cars, here's a tip for anybody, even if it's not a Toyota, is that usually certain cars have certain problems that repeat over and over and are common, right? Most things are good, but each car has its issues. And so you go on the forums and stuff like this, usually you'll see those issues coming up and it'll sound a lot like the issue you have, and that'll be a way to find out what's going on with your car. This was a while back, so yeah, let me know if that solenoid did the trick. And other than that, yeah, you're gonna have to do some research or get a transmission guy to help you out, because it can be so many things with an auto trans. I would want to ask you, when was the last time the fluid was changed, or had you just changed the fluid and then it started giving you problems, stuff like that. It can be a lot of things. Is it slipping, or is it just sluggish? Is it just not working, or is there a lot of slip going on? Is the engine revving? There's so many questions that are diagnose that problem. So Ben is talking about reliability. I can't understand why these engines failed with automatic transmissions, because they are and were always in the best RPM range for best operation. Maybe not, right? Automatic transmissions back in the day were not as smart as they are now. So I think even manual transmissions back in the day were the better option. I believe these engines lost credibility because they are basically high rev engines, 8,000, which isn't. I think that's over redline. Ben, I don't, and more consider the rock climbing by the rock climbing crowd who overwhelmingly favored other engines. I'm assuming like torqueier engines, right? And mine loves to roll at 85, 95 miles an hour without a problem. That's good for you. So I don't run mine that high because like I definitely realize that my car is getting old, and so I usually roll at 65 and I get 22 miles a gallon, and my I got lots of miles. You have 259,000, so yeah, that's good. So if it's working for you, do that. I don't necessarily agree that they're high rev engines. I think power band is like really nice at 4 to 5, but I even really honestly I kind of like don't rev mine because I shift around 4. It does real well, and I find mine plenty torquey for the trails, especially with a manual transmission. I could see maybe automatic changes that, but with the manual and low range on the transfer case, I don't even need the gas pedal. It just rolls over stuff. So a couple comments about the 4.0 for 3.4 swap, and that like Brendan hates the 3 slow out of experience, but like you said, it's what makes this gen cheap and available. Yeah, it's that perception, right? I don't want to say that the 3.0 doesn't have its problems, but all engines do. Like the 22R has had gasket issues too, and other issues too. Like I don't think the 22R is necessarily a better engine. That might trigger some guys. I'm happy to hear someone without the 3.0 doom and gloom. Yes, Norse Falconer. I love your name. I love your little avatar here. Very cool. My ancestry is Swedish. It's very much a Swedish, and then some across Norway and the Faroe Islands a little bit, and Ireland and Scotland, and then up into Iceland and Greenland. So kind of the exact route the Vikings went. That's where my sister did a genetic test. That's where, like, except for like 3% of our genetics, it's all up in that area. So a little bit on the Iberian Peninsula is like the last 3%. So cool. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for the commenting. And he says he rarely goes past 3,000 RPM on the highway. So yeah, I don't feel the need to rev mine. A common known error in these are the spark plugs, and simple tune-up can have you chasing your threads because they're aluminum. That's a Ford thing. I haven't had thread issues. I had Ford engines, the 4.2 and stuff, that the spark plug threads strip out super easy. I've had spark plugs pop out when I'm driving and stuff, but on a retired Crown Vic, it was terrible. The Toyota, I haven't had that issue at all. But yeah, I mean, any car, right? Take your time. Use torque specs. So, and I don't use anti-seize on my threads, anti-seize on my spark plug threads, because that makes it slipperier. So when you're torquing, it's actually getting tighter than it's intended to be. So that can be an issue too, because the difference in friction there. I have a 95 and it has no power going up a hill. You didn't say which transmission you have. So I have to take the long way home, and would appreciate if you could tell me the problem. I can't tell you the problem, but no power is different than being underpowered. So yeah, I mean, going up like mountain grades, long hills and stuff, if you have the manual, you will have to downshift. That's just the nature of these things. Like a long grade, I'm in a mild grade for a while. I'll get down to 4th gear easily. Then mountain grades and stuff are 3rd gear all day long. Yeah, it's not going to be a speed demon going up the hill. When I'm fully loaded up with camping overlanding gear and stuff like that, I've had occasion where I've gotten passed by semis going up long mountain grades. So that might be your problem. But other than that, make sure your air filter's clean, your fuel filter's clean. Make sure your maintenance is all done. It should be good if you have no other major problems. So do your maintenance, tune up, right? So spark plugs, wires, cap and rotor if that hasn't been done. New fuel filter, new air filter. I had one guy that had an air filter that was just so clogged up, he was having no power. It was just a dirty air filter. Changed the air filter and it was, boom, brand new. So without going any deeper, that's what I would check first. Check for vacuum leaks too if that doesn't solve it. Yeah, another thing, for 91 4Runner when going up the mountains, I have to downshift all the way to third, going 45, while even fifth wheels are doing 55 or more. No, you don't have a problem. That sounds correct. Miguel, yeah. Um, you're in the Pacific Northwest, I see, yeah. So you have the same mountain grades I do. So yeah, that's that's going to be a thing. It's normal. AC stopped working. Yeah, I mean they're old, right? You're just pointing that out. That another issue with these old 4Runners, the AC stops working. You know, that kind of stuff like the seals and clutches and stuff all get really old. Mine hasn't worked in years and years and years. Not even, I live where it gets to around 100. I just live without it. Um, I don't really know what you're saying in that question. Okay, so this will be the last one for today. I got a 94 with 200,000 miles. Needs maintenance, but that's okay. Got a check engine light for the EGR valve. Yes. Should I look for used OEM on eBay or look maybe RockAuto or another brand? Um, so first of all, doesn't necessarily mean you have to replace it, right? So you could be don't fall into the EGR delete crowd. There's no need for that. Why would an EGR not be working, right? So it could be vacuum issues. It could be diaphragms stuck in there. Like there's a couple issues. There's some electronics that go there too. So those are all things you need to check. So we're going to emphasize on this channel proper diagnosis, right? So diagnose the problem. Just don't throw parts at it. Make sure that you're getting vacuum. The vacuum lines are all connected. The electronic lines connected. That you're getting voltage at that electric um, connector. And also then you could undo the EGR valve and clean it out and check for functionality, right? So you could use a vacuum hand pump and see if it's working, you know, and simulate that it's working. So before you go replacing parts, like maybe the part's not bad, maybe the things leading to the part are bad. So this can go with all kinds of like valves, sensors, all this stuff. So for anything you guys run into, um, most often it's the part, but it doesn't always have to be, especially on these things with all those old vacuum lines and stuff and all those old electrical connectors and wires. Yeah, it could be other things. So I would recommend first like figuring out, is it the EGR valve? Um, and that's like 30 minutes worth of work to make sure everything else is working. Um, and then yeah, you can get a vacuum pump at, you know, AutoZone or Harbor Freight or something cheap, probably like $10, and just put the vacuum on there while the car is running and see if it works. But then yeah, if you need to replace the EGR valve, they're not cheap, but they're not that expensive. So get a new one. Don't use used. I would try to go OEM if you can find it. But then yeah, see what RockAuto has. Um, I'm not familiar. I would have to look on there and see what brands they have before I could recommend anything there. But um, it's worth just replacing and doing it properly. And Toyota engineers knew what they were doing with the technology at the time. Just keep it intact. So, all right, guys, there's a whole bunch more here. We barely scratched the surface. So I hope it was fun. I hope it was informative. And yeah, we are almost hitting an hour here. So there's so much to talk about around this stuff. So leave questions, comments, that kind of stuff. Guys that I asked to follow up with me, leave comments on how you're doing. Anybody that's left comments here, you feel like your question wasn't addressed, or you want to update me on what you're doing with it, and you know, anybody that bought ones and stuff and like doing the work you talked about on here, I know there was a bunch of comments like that. Let me know how your rig's turning out. Let me know how everything's running for you. And yeah, excited to hear from all you guys running this engine and running the old Toyotas and stuff like that. And they're just don't scrap it. Like really, give it to me if you don't want it, because you can't get them anymore. And yeah, so hats off to all of you guys working so hard to keep these things on the road. It's awesome. And thank you, as always, for watching. I appreciate you. My Instagram is Agile Woodsman, so you can follow me on Instagram. And, of course, here, like, hang out, subscribe. There's going to be more topics coming up, like overlanding is basically an overarching theme for me of the outdoors. So, classic camping, bushcraft, outdoors skills, survival, and you can go back through some of my old videos. It's kind of the focus of the whole thing. So, and my first four-wheel drive I bought in 1991. So I've been kind of at this on and off for a while. So, yeah, I'm just happy to be able to share and really like, this Toyota community is awesome, and I'm kind of glad that overlanding is so popular now that we can have this community to talk about all this stuff with. So, yeah, subscribe if you're into outdoors, nature, overlanding, bushcraft, survival skills, nature connection, that kind of stuff. Hit the subscribe button, of course. Hang out with me. Stick around. Give me a like if you would, please. It really helps. It helps me reach people. It helps YouTube want to help me reach people. Leave a comment and all that stuff, and thank you. So that could be your Christmas gift for me, is do all that stuff for me here. Comment, like, subscribe, watch the whole video. Follow me over on Instagram, Agile Woodsman over there too. And appreciate you guys so much, and thanks for all the wonderful interactions. You guys are amazing, awesome. It's been so fun, and we'll do more of these for sure. Lots more coming up. So, all right, wishing you all a great Thanksgiving, great holiday. Hope you and your families are all healthy and happy, and that life is going okay for them through these like difficult, challenging times. So yeah, we'll talk soon. I will see you soon. Thanks, guys.